Basically, what's going to happen is I'm going to be rambling like this, and then I'm just going to get started with the podcast by going, "This is Unfuck the Poor," and we've been away for at least a year, I think. Nothing real crazy has happened in the world. But I did take a break from doing the podcast, and now I'm back. I was in the middle of writing a fucking novel, and I stopped. I had to stop because I had other stuff to do, like this podcast. So this is a gimmick episode. I've brought two of my friends, longtime friends. I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and then we'll get started with the hellscape that is 2025 Trump presidency. To my left, I have. Hey, go right ahead. Introduce yourselves.
I am Corey. I am a lifelong United States resident.
I'm Ryan. We're all from the same hometown. Glad to meet up again.
How long have we all known each other?
I met Ryan in fourth grade, and I think I met you maybe in fifth grade, but we all went to the same school in fourth grade.
We did.
You and Ryan were buddies, and I was only vaguely aware of you guys until Ryan. I met Ryan in college. We became buds, and then after college, I ran into you. Ryan.
That is correct.
And we've been hanging out ever since.
I met Ryan in fifth grade at church, and we just happened to go to the same school. Ryan, this is my first memory of you. I don't know if I've told you this story. We were at church, Grace Lutheran, and I'm in Sunday school, and then here comes Ryan, and he's 10 years old, and he has an airplane made out of popsicle sticks. And if people listening know, like, model airplanes, if the wood models, they have these little plastic busts of the pilots. And Ryan had glued the plastic bust of a pilot onto this airplane, and there was a switch. So when he pressed the pilot down, the propeller on the popsicle airplane spun. And I remember thinking, I don't know who the fuck this kid is, but I like him.
That's awesome, and I'm proud that I brought that to church. That's great.
It's been a long time since I've done an episode, and the thing with that is, like, October 7th happened, and Hamas attacked Israel, and I was like, well, this is not going to be good for Palestinians. And so I just decided I was going to wait, and I was going to watch before I, did an episode on Palestine. And it just kept getting worse. Like, Israel just kept doing genocide more and more than it's been doing for the last 75 years. And I was like, how the fuck do I even do an episode on this? I can't. I didn't even know where to start. I tried, I started, I stopped, and I decided to just give up. And then there was an election, and Trump won again, and I fucking gave up. And so I started writing a book. But then the first 6 weeks of Trump's presidency have started, and Corey, why don't you give us an analysis of what's gone on these last 6 weeks?
So I have an inside line to the federal workforce. A good friend of mine works as a federale, and it's been pure nuthouse chaos for the entire time, and it's not even like good chaos, right? It's one thing that I always think about when it comes to, like, waste, fraud, and abuse within the government is, like, the people who benefit from waste, fraud, and abuse are the ones that are running the Republican Party. And actual waste, fraud, and abuse, like, they couldn't be less interested in it. But, like, speaking as someone who's got some insider information, like, there are people who are traveling, and mid-travel, their credit card gets its limit reduced to $1, so they can't move on to the next step of their trip that they're doing for the U.S. government. There's, just all over the government. It's like if you bought a trucking company, Joseph, and you're like, well, I need to see what all these trucks are doing. I need everybody to slam on the brakes in traffic as hard as you can and just take an Uber home, and we'll just take a look at the trucks tomorrow.
You say that like that's not the right way to deal with a trucking company.
I'm going to confess, Joseph, I don't work in trucking, so maybe that's exactly what you do when you take over a trucking company. But I just assume the things in the trucks need to not slam on the middle of the brakes, and the people behind you don't need to have you brake suddenly, and trucks just don't need to be left on the roadway. So
everything I understand about the federal government and trucking, I think you've summed up pretty well. It's all dog shit. So that's what's happened in the last 6 weeks, and I decided we needed to get together and make a podcast about it because we have a friend chat. It's on an encrypted messaging app. The name of it is appropriately IngSoc, which is from Orwell's 1984, shorthand for English socialism. We talk about all things there, dick jokes, politics. That's it.
That's essentially it. Dreams about
So this episode, instead of picking a topic and doing a deep dive, which is what I usually do, doing a bunch of research and getting real in my head about it, I decided we were just going to kind of wing it. And so this episode, there are a few different titles I was going to give it. I was going to call it Case Closed, and I was going to have like a whole court sitcom opening or Law and Order, dun, 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 and it would be like, Your Honor, I did not know you could not shut down the Department of Education.
I'm just a simple country lawyer, but
Case closed. I also thought about the title Assassinate the News, and I thought, oh gosh, with Luigi Mangione and
too soon.
And that CEO guy, maybe that's too soon.
Or
maybe
not soon
that's
enough.
like
One of the two.
The
timing.
And on that topic, I definitively need to say, okay, you cannot and should not, listener, if you are hearing, you cannot murder CEOs.
And?
No.
Oh, that's it? Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Just that last part's really important.
Right,
okay?
right. Yeah.
Murder CEOs.
Yeah, cannot.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, that whole thing. Yeah, for the
You got
purposes, for our legal team, cannot.
Our legal team is a beagle that just ran in here and ran away. She is the legal beagle. Okay. All right. I told you guys in the group chat that this is going to be a gimmick episode, and it is. So there are so many ways to talk about what's going on right now, and also so many different topics, so much stuff going on. How do you choose one thing to talk about? And when you look at the headlines, when you open your phone or you go to your favorite news website, you're like, what do I follow? What story do I follow? And I've noticed that there are some trails that are not worth going down because it's settled. It's case law. We don't need to discuss it. And so I thought this would be a good way to whittle down all of the current events into I'm never fucking talking about this again because it's dumb and bullshit and it distracts from what's actually happening. And so that is why, assassinate the news. Case closed. We're not talking about this anymore. So here is the format for today's topics, or for today's episode. Each of us has brought a minimum of 5 topics. There is no maximum, with a maximum explanation time of 60 seconds, no minimum. Basically, this is a closing argument on why we're not wasting more than 60 seconds on any of these topics. Theme, are Nazis bad? Did Ukraine attack Russia? Did Trump know about Project 2025? So here's the final word on all these topics, because, you keep seeing it on news and social media, and this isn't up for debate. I did actually want to start this with a serious intro, and it is Ryan and Corey. You might be familiar with it. Corey, with your poli-sci background, you might be aware of it. Are you familiar with the phrase catching the ball or throwing the ball?
No, I'm not. No.
Okay. I read about it just recently, and it is this kind of a debate strategy, if you will. Republicans never want to catch the ball when they're talking about a topic. They want to throw it because their policies don't make any sense, and I'll elaborate. What that means is Republicans or conservatives, they're going to focus on niche, hot-button issues, like trans athletes. That's a perfect example. It's a complex, nuanced, and when you dig down, there are realities that conservatives and liberals don't want to address. But the Republican stance is that they shouldn't be allowed, period, hard stop. Liberals have to make a case for why they should. So then liberals get caught up talking about gender and sex and hormones and statistics. Voters do not give a shit about that. Say a debate or even just a conversation on funding public education comes up, and instead of talking about that directly, the Republican or the conservative, instead of meeting you with that argument, well, they say that schools are pushing gender ideology and CRT and have kitty litter boxes in classrooms. That's the Gish Gallup, right? You throw as much shit out there. There's
Right.
so much shit that you can't even keep up with it. You can't defend every single.
There's a whole right-wing ecosystem where they start out and they beta test this. They focus group this. This goes up through the echelons from Reddit, from 4chan, from the podcast verse, and eventually percolates into more mainstream right-wing outlets until it makes its way to the normie crowd, the CNNs, the MSNBCs, the nightly news. It's a whole ecosystem designed to push that, and they all read off the same talking points to get these things pushed out in the mainstream media.
And those are the balls that conservatives are throwing. They're lobbing these balls, and they know that you're going to catch one because they're going to say something that sparks something, that you have to go after and you have to defend. When you start doing that, you've already lost the debate. If you're talking about public education, public funding for education, and they mention transgender athletes, and you go into transgender athletes, you just gave them an out. They don't have to talk about funding public schools now.
This reminds me of a realization I had several years ago, which is that when you talk about politics with a conservative, you're never arguing about the thing you think you're arguing about. It's almost always going back to like what I call the 3 primordial questions that every animal has to answer, which is like, who's having sex, who's boss, and what's for dinner.
The answer to all 3 sometimes is me.
Right. Joseph for president, 2028. But I do believe that when you want to engage on a topic, the Democrats are these rule followers, and they get a lot of them. They come from this professional class. They come from these.
That we're gonna get into that.
Okay, all right. I don't want to steal your thunder.
But 100%, 100%. So what do you do? You throw that funding ball back at them because they don't want to talk about it. You say those issues, the transgender issues or CRT or whatever, those issues are for the school districts themselves. You say, I can see that you're passionate about education. So what's your plan for building a more robust public school system? What is the best way to invest our tax dollars in public schools? And they will probably throw that ball back at you. And you just stick to it. You say funding is the issue here. Supporting teachers and students. Why can't you talk about school funding? We have nearly 50 million kids in public schools, but you don't seem to have a plan to help them succeed. We need to fund STEM programs. We need higher literacy rates, higher rates of graduation. We need better trade programs and more resources for kids with special needs. We need to prepare students for the complexity of the 21st century. Don't you agree that these are good investments? What's your plan for school funding? You hit them with that Gish Gallop on the actual fucking topic because they don't have an answer. That's not transgender, CRT, DEI, whatever.
That reminds me of the one piece of negotiating with hostage takers advice that I know, which is a very famous negotiator once said he always asked them, how am I supposed to help you? How am I going to get you $1 million in unmarked sequential bills unless you do this for me? He always would put it back on the hostage taker. How am I even going to do this for you?
Yeah. One thing that comes to mind for me is Naomi Klein, and she's written a lot about how kind of like what you said, when you aren't actually talking about what you think you're talking about. And a lot of times what's threatening is the implication of the solutions. So a lot of what we're talking about, a lot of the solutions are collective. And so it's not actually the issue itself, it's the implication of the solution bordering on things that feel socialist. And so you kind of have to go, kind of to your earlier point, go a step beyond the actual issue and see what's threatening. And one thing I learned in some climate activism I used to do is because I'm, on any number of topics, I can jump right into the response. It can be really insightful to ask a follow-up and say, why do you feel that way? And because there's the initial topic, and then go deeper, and you'll find there's some other core thing there that's threatening.
And I was going to say, this is a bit of a tangent, but the socialism as a term has been expanded from the public or there's been collectivized means of production to mean anything that helps somebody who is not rich. Mm-hmm. Anything that has to be done as a collective now is socialism.
See, and I think our failure there is that, like you say, liberals are these or Democrats or whatever, are these rule followers. And we adhere to the strict definition of what socialism is. It's not that, right? But
right.
Conservatives pervert that meaning. So it's as defeatist or as capitulating as it might sound, it kind of does us a disservice to talk about it like we're using the right definition and they're using the wrong definition.
Yeah.
We kind of have to meet them where they are and say, well, that's not socialism at all. This is just...
Yeah. I can remember when Barack Obama was presiding over a literal, like, the government was getting rid of its partial ownership of some of the American car companies. And he was being accused of being socialist as he's actively devolving government ownership of the means of production back out of the government, which, again, it just goes to show you that the words don't really matter. It's the emotions behind them, to your point.
That kind of winds up this intro. They don't have a real platform for their base. They just have distractions. They equate public education, socialism, whatever, with CRT, DEI, girls' locker rooms, which they really focus on heavily, which is bizarre. Going back to catching and throwing that ball, when you catch that ball, then that's what voters are going to hear, because you're now talking about the subject they brought up. They don't have an answer for it. They just want you to talk about it, and they want to disagree with you. That's never the issue. The issue is always very simple. It's always taxes, public schools, and conservatives have no plans for those things. So this episode is basically every ball that we're not catching. All right. So I'm gonna kick things off with our first topic, and it's sorry, I cheated.
Cheat away. There are no rules here. Like here's the thing: is people on the left, I think, a lot of us kind of got in love with the rules at one point. And one thing that I've come to understand over the last 8 years is that everything is renegotiable.
That you cannot do rules.
Yeah.
You can't do them.
No. And I mean, one of my points here is how useless hypocrisy is.
They
as
don't give a shit.
as any kind of like debating point. It's almost irrelevant.
Yeah.
Hypocrisy.
And lies.
I hear, but I still see it. And my mom will call me up and she'll be like, "Did you hear what they do? If they really cared about education," I'm like, "Mom, let me stop you. Let me just stop you right there. We're just wasting energy. We know they don't. Let's just move on." But nonetheless, as you were, sir.
I cheated. The first topic that I'm going to bring up, we don't even have to debate it anymore. It doesn't. Nazis and the Nazi salutes. All right, that's easy. Nazis are bad, and there's no such thing as an ironic Nazi salute. Elon Musk's family tree full of Nazis and pro-apartheid assholes. Was it a Nazi salute? Yes. Okay, plenty of autistic people go their entire lives without accidentally doing a Sieg Heil. So this topic, I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit what news source it's coming from. If they're debating it, I'm so sick of seeing it. Yes, he's a fucking Nazi. He did a Nazi salute. We're done. Case closed. Your Honor, he's a fucking Nazi.
Yeah, I'm squarely in Indiana Jones camp. The only thing to do with the Nazi is punch him.
Or drive into them with an airplane and then they...
Oh, yeah. Or, let them open the Ark of the Covenant.
I'll add to it. I don't have anything else. But I learned as a kid how to deal with Nazis from, you might be familiar with the video game Wolfenstein.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. You're an American prisoner of war. I can't remember his first name, but his last name is Blastowitz. Anyway, I got all three remakes on the Xbox there, and then I played it at Wolfenstein 3D as a kid. Point is, you shoot them. You shoot them in the face. Shoot them in the face. You shoot them in the leg. You steal their shit. You shoot them and you steal their shit, and you escape from the castle. That's what you do with Nazis. Can
I just comment that I'm really impressed that they had that level of hit detection? You have head, you have leg, body,
well, they do in the new version.
In the new version, not in the older version.
And the old one, you just are shooting,
right.
I guess, at the
You're
sprite.
shooting at pixels, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Tangent over. I will say this, I've been encountering, and this is going to surprise a lot of people listening. I'm actually a middle-aged white man. And I know I don't sound like it, but I've been reading, and as
Corey,
such,
our entire fucking relationship now is a lie. Okay.
But I've been preparing to become a middle-aged white man. The last couple of years, I've been reading a lot of World War II books, as befits a man of my dotage, and I've really been enjoying reading about when Nazis get theirs in a way that I didn't used to. And I feel like that's probably not good for my soul, but I'm taking my wins when I can get them.
Agree. Ryan, you have anything you want to add to officially case closed on the Nazis?
Well, on a slightly positive note, have you seen how Tesla car sales have tanked in Germany?
Yes.
The shares or share values tanking.
And Australia and the Scandinavian countries And I wonder why they're so sensitive about the whole Nazi thing. Yeah, I can't even imagine. Yeah, yeah. And even in California, like 10, 20% drop, something like that, 10 to 12% drop in new registrations for Tesla.
I read the other day that that Musk's net worth has dropped by $111 billion. Something
that's a
like
good
that.
start. That's a good start.
He's wiped out like an entire like Bill Gates worth of wealth.
Can I just tell you? Yeah, exactly. Can I just tell you how bizarre? Like, I feel like this is how you know we're in the worst timeline, because a president who is anti-illegal immigrant and rants about drugs all the time has hired somebody who at one point was working in the United States from South Africa without a work authorization. So he was, I think, an illegal immigrant, allegedly. Let's just put that out there.
That is how you would.
That has
use
been
the phrase,
reported.
yeah.
I will say that. And he also, I think, has admitted to using ketamine.
Yeah.
Right. And
Which listen, okay,
he's in charge. So a drug taking former illegal immigrant who sells electric vehicles and also like basically has most of his modern fortune because of enormous subsidies from the U.S. government is now tearing apart that government. It's just a complete Ouroboros shit cycle of terrible, all in one human being.
It really is. Also, I have to admit, I am doing therapeutic ketamine right now.
Yeah, but you're not disassembling the U.S. government, so you've proven you can take ketamine and not do that.
I don't do it recreationally. That's the thing, though. I do it as part of therapy.
Are we talking about disassembling U.S. government? Oh, the ketamine. Okay.
Both.
Every now and then you just take a post office hubcap, and that's why they have no hubcaps.
Destroying democracy is just like a hobby of
Yeah,
mine.
I'm the same way.
It's not my full-time gig. All right, so that's it. Nazis, case closed. They're done. We're done. We don't need to see, yes, he's a Nazi. I don't give a shit anymore. All right, Corey or Ryan, what have you brought to the table? What's your case closed?
I don't think the Democratic Party is actually like a political party the way that I thought it was. So I don't think that the Democratic Party is what we would call an opposition party. Like their strategy.
Sorry, I'm so sorry. I forgot. Since it is a gimmick episode, I'm going to run a timer.
Okay, yeah, no worries. But you're observing it, and I had this feeling during the Obama administration and during the Biden and Trump administration, where it was like it's weird how in physics for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction, but not in politics when it comes to the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. Like when Mitch McConnell in 2008, like he was facing down 60 Democrats. Like the Congress had huge swung blue. Talk about a blue wave. Barack Obama had just shellacked McCain. And Mitch McConnell didn't come out and say, what do we do? What are we going to do? It just blew my mind. And that is essentially like playing dead, sucking up to rich donors, like just pretending like we're just going to sit back and let the Republicans screw this all up. And then we'll take the ball after they fumble instead of having an affirmative agenda and actually like opposing and using all these arcane Byzantine rules of parliamentary process in order to slow down, forestall, and just stop this fascist agenda, frankly. It just blows my mind. And I kind of don't feel like the Democratic Party is actually in opposition to the Republican Party. They're just a slower version of the Republican Party.
That's brilliant. That was right on time. I agree with you 100% on that. I'm going to say it for you. Case closed. Democratic Party, not actually a political party.
We have a one-party system in this country. I'm fairly sure. There's like one party, and then there's Bernie and AOC.
Hakeem Jeffries saying, what do we do, is the most useless use of television cameras, microphones.
That's the most pathetic
breathing.
thing I've seen as an adult and like paying attention to politics in my entire adult life. Multi-decades.
I know there are smart people that work for these Congress people. Yeah. I know that there are people who know the laws and procedures better than they themselves.
Dedicated staffers, people who have been in the system. Like there's always a rule that can stop. It's like when the $15 minimum wage died because the parliamentarian, like the Senate parliamentarian, said they couldn't use reconciliation to do it. When Biden was in office, there was a failed vote on it. Well, there was some weirdo rule that the parliamentarian cited, and the Democrats were like, "Well, can't do that now." Right? So it's almost like a weaponized incompetence. Like when your boyfriend can't do the laundry well, like he mixes the colors the colored clothes with the whites, which feels strange to say, but all your white shirts come out pink. He does it
I'm
because
gonna have to edit this heavily. It's all right. My friend Kenny on here almost got me to say white pride. So
anyway, but it's weaponized incompetence. It's like, well, we tried and we couldn't do it. We tried nothing and we're all out of ideas.
And yet the thing is, they really don't try. And I feel like they know who knows, right? Like they could just be like, hey, go get Gary, like out of the wings. He knows like what to do in this situation. And Gary's been there like 30 years serving all the Congress
Right.
people.
Or just somebody who was alive during Mitch McConnell's reign as a Senate Majority Leader.
Someone who just
you
happened
just
to
take his playbook and run it backward.
Because, yeah, he's got a binder full of plays.
Binder full. It's next to Romney's binder full of women.
You got it.
They have a whole row of binders.
Ryan, anything to say on the Democratic Party?
Well, one of my 5 actually was about the two-party system. So it was really, for me, case closed is
Segue.
This is the time to get past this. I'm not sure what the mechanism actually is, but people are so dissatisfied. The Democrats lost this as much as the Republicans won it. So I don't know. What do you guys have any thoughts? Like, where's the window to open up to third or fourth parties?
Well, unfortunately, structurally, and this is my political science nerd, I'm pushing up my glasses. You can't see it on the recording, but I'm pushing up my glasses and going, actually, the American political process is not going to support more than 2 parties without serious structural reform. So that's more of a long-term goal. If you want to make change, affect change, essentially we have to do a hostile takeover of the Democratic Party. We need left-leaning MAGA to take over the Democratic Party. And they're at a 20% approval rating after this most recent election, the Democratic Party is, which means the time has never been more ripe.
And there is precedent for it because this was Lincoln's run up to the presidency. It was, correct me if I'm wrong, the Whigs became the Republicans, correct?
I do not know that.
I believe that is correct. The Democrats have always been Democrats. Yeah, that's right. And it was, Lincoln was part of the early Republicans who said, we've got to reform this party, the Whig Party.
I mean, I do know the Democrats had long been the party of the Southeast,
yeah,
and like wealthy industrialists, more industrial North.
This is what happens when I don't research a topic.
Yeah,
but there is a precedent.
Just talk with confidence. That seems to be enough.
The Whigs became Republicans. Lincoln, I won't say led the charge, but he was one of the more vocal proponents of changing the way that the Whig Party was run, and they became the Republican Party. And similarly, if you recall, what's the guy's name? Goldwater, Barry Goldwater.
Oh, yeah.
With his whole Southern strategy, that was a galvanizing moment for the Republican Party as well. They went after conservative Southern Democrats. My wife's family historically voted Democrat. They are very, very conservative. They are very, very Southern. Yeah. But the Democratic Party was their party, and it wasn't because they were liberal. It was because they were Southern conservatives, and that was the Democratic Party. And there's still, I think politicians don't understand or appreciate that identity still exists in places in the South.
Yeah, well, I call them, this is my super nerdy political science word for them, but I call them contra-libertarians because I don't have a better word. But, if you were, this is sort of a simplification, but if you were to plot out like a libertarian, they favor low government spending on things like welfare, industrial policy. They want a really light government footprint on, like, say, fiscal economic issues. And they also want a light government footprint when it comes to social issues. That a true libertarian favors abortion rights because they just don't believe the government should have anything to do with it, right? Versus and so they're socially liberal, but what we might say is fiscally conservative. But there's a whole other quadrant opposing to a libertarian that wants that is socially conservative but liberal on economic issues. So they would favor a larger welfare state. They would favor a lot of left-leaning issues, but they also happen to maybe be a teensy bit racist and patriarchal and misogynist, or very much so. And the Democrat. But one final point on this is that the Democratic Party abandoned the whole material, like, we want to make your lives materially better through things like workers' rights and supporting unions and all the sort of the New Deal stuff. They abandoned all the material well-being of the New Deal stuff that mainly applied only to white people. but that kept certain kind of working class white person in the party. Materially benefits me. I'm going to vote for them. I don't care about the women's lib stuff. I'm just here because I want to be in a union. And the Democratic Party, I think, has abandoned all that. And so what was left? What was left was some rich, educated people wagging their finger at you because you don't treat Mexicans right, you don't treat black people right, you don't treat women right, whatever.
This comes to Hillary's basket of deplorables comment.
Yeah. Now,
but to Ryan's point, with the two-party system, and within this conversation, we don't have a two-party nation. I mean, I work with some very conservative folks who are not actually all that conservative when it comes down to it. I mean, like you say, they are, socially conservative, but they very much believe in Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security. They are against people going bankrupt from hospital bills. And these are the people that I think get incorrectly lumped in that centrist area, like the undecided voter. And there's so much nuance, and the two-party system crushes all that nuance. And that's why somebody like Bernie can have so much support, and yet those who would vote for him ultimately voted for Trump because Bernie wasn't an option. And what someone like Bernie Sanders stands for is fundamental change, not status quo. And that's what Donald Trump offers. That's what Bernie offers. Biden did not. Biden offered status quo. Kamala Harris offered status quo. Barack Obama, status quo. George W. Bush, status quo. If you want the United States of America to run essentially like it always has been, you vote for the traditional parties. Tea Party took over, became MAGA, whatever. That extreme change we're seeing now with Musk. If we wanted a more just and equitable society, we should have gone with Bernie. So yeah.
And what about the I understand what you're saying structurally. That's too long of a putt maybe, but the Justice Democrats ran many candidates. AOC is one of the most notable. But when you saw that happen, they got some really progressive people throwing out some old time Democrats. But then a lot of those people moved to the center to kind of work within the system. So it's a harder message to me to say we have to work with the Democrats. That's the only option.
Well, I would phrase it differently as not work with the Democrats, but like literally take over the Democratic Party. Like, insinuate, change with the Democratic Party, change the center of balance, center of power within the Democratic Party.
And I think that's what Bernie and AOC are getting right. I think they are showing their constituents, right, that we don't have to be these textbook Democrats. We can actually stand for the things that you stand for, and we stand with our voters. Like, these are the things the voters said they want. And these people are called radical leftists. These are the members of the progressive wing of the Democratic Party, representatives who actually advocate for their voters. That's radical.
Yeah. Well, the radicals are those who, you would be a radical if you just took the majoritarian position on every survey question asked of the American people on various issues. Like, when you ask the American people, do you want like universal health care or medical care or, these supposed left-leaning issues, the left-leaning side gets 60, 70, 80% of poll response. So the idea that Bernie is mainstream, it's everybody else that's wackadoodle, in my humble opinion. If you were to go and compare his policy preferences with those of the American people, he's probably more in alignment than many of his quote unquote centrist or mainstream peers.
And I think that's what the two-party system gets wrong. I think that's what the Democratic Party gets wrong. And on that note, I'm going to say it for you. Case closed. Ryan, two-party system, dead. You're right. All right.
One-party system.
It's a one-party system. Democratic Party's dead. Next topic I'm going to start. I cheated again. Sorry, guys. We're going Russia and Ukraine and Trump. All of this goes all together. So Russia invaded Ukraine. They're the bad guy. That's full stop right there. Ukraine doesn't have elections right now because why? It's a fucking war. And it's in their constitution not to hold elections in wartime. Is Zelensky a dictator? No. Both opposition parties led by Tymoshenko and Poroshenko refused to push for an election. In Ukrainian parliament voted unanimously to keep Zelensky in power. Trump tried to talk to the opposition parties to get them to do a vote. And listen, Poroshenko and Tymoshenko, they are the opposition party. Tymoshenko is way more liberal than Zelensky, and Poroshenko is essentially just an oligarch. Okay, so neither of them agreed to push for an election. Trump can't comprehend the people of Ukraine liking a good leader voluntarily because he is a shit leader who relies on threats and fealty. It doesn't matter if Trump is a Russian asset, quote unquote, because right now he's certainly the best asset Russia has. Case closed. Russia's the bad guy in this situation. They invaded Ukraine. Fuck them. And Zelensky, I wish he would officiate my wedding.
I'd go to that wedding. The only thing I'll add to that is that if Donald Trump is not a Russian asset, that means he's just doing this for free. And that just doesn't sound like Donald Trump, right? Like, I mean, he doesn't just do things out of the goodness of his heart. He's not just going to stand for Putin and, advocate why would he do this unless he was getting something or was going to get something or had gotten something out of it?
And here's the thing. I agree with you 100%. I do, as much as I would love to, again, it's case closed. As much as I would love to dive into this topic
Absolutely.
and go, full Krasnov conspiracy theory, I don't think it's a conspiracy theory. I believe it, whatever. I don't care. But it doesn't matter. He's certainly acting like a Russian asset. He is
quacking like a duck.
He is spouting Russian propaganda directly from Russian state media. I did a whole thing on Ukraine. I consumed a lot of Russian media. And the shit that he says about Zelensky is exactly what he said about Alexei Navalny, the opposition party in Russia. I mean, it's textbook. I mean, where is Trump getting his talking points? Directly from Russia. I mean, it's case closed. He's a fucking piece of shit.
You know who else agrees? Elon Musk's AI engine Grok.
Yes.
That was, just saw that yesterday. Fascinating that, 75 to 85% likelihood that Trump is compromised in some way, Russian asset, however you want to use it, trending toward the higher side.
I think the proof is in the AI pudding right there. Grok said it.
Or as my dad calls it, A1.
It's how steak is done.
Holy fuck. I love that so much. Okay. Who's got the next topic? Case closed.
I'm going to take a slightly different tact here. Not about a direct political topic, but how do you guys feel? So about a year and a half ago, I was able to work remotely from Montreal, Canada. And this was the same time that the Hollywood writers' strike was happening. And so just unintentionally, I was so shut off from U.S. political anything. And it was such an amazing experience. So none of the late night comedy shows, which usually are very politically whatever, I basically ignored the U.S. for 4 months. And then I didn't even realize it until a month in about how nice it was. I think in today's current context, we should be very intentional about political shutout periods because it's exhausting, and that's the goal. The goal is to be exhausting. So you can't take it to such a level that you just, because it's very privileged in a way that if you can truly ignore it and, if it's not impacting me, I don't care. Not that level, but at least it intentionally just block it out.
It kind of reminds me of almost like a political Sabbath. You take a day where you're not going to check your phone, you're not going to check the news. And I think you need that, right? You need that refractory period before you can go back and do whatever battles or, whatever actions you're going to be taking the other 6 days of the week.
It's like Steve Bannon said, you flood the zone with shit, distract everybody, and meanwhile your real agenda is, getting done in the background. Nobody notices. But Ryan, to your point, I came actually to that, not realization, but conclusion. That you can't look at the news every day. And I have a confession. I spent $2.99 on a fucking mindless game on my phone. And that is what I spent today doing, just playing that fucking game. It's called Fruit Merger. Okay.
Is there multiplayer?
No. I am alone. They're these little fruits with faces, and they fall into a box. And when two fruits that are the same hit, they transform into another fruit. And all of a sudden, I'm not afraid of losing my job. And I just do that for hours. So yeah, Ryan, we have to take a day off of news.
Yeah, and for me, one of my other topics we'll talk about later is like, what do you even do? That question of what's the most impactful thing you can do. A related thing I thought of was this research that says if you use the phrase "should" when you're talking to yourself, like I should go to the gym, or I should eat this, or I should whatever, it has a similar mental effect. I don't know if it's like dopamine or whatever the mechanism is, but it has a similar effect as if you'd actually done it. So the more you use the word "should," the less likely you are to do those things. So if you get up and you say, "Oh, I really should go for a jog," and then you just sit there like, "Oh, I said should, so I kind of checked the box." Well, that idea of a pendulum with the way this political news works, when you consume it all, and you get all outraged like we should because it's all very outrageous. That whole process of getting worked up, you feel like you've done something, but all you've done is change something in your head. So to me, you take the break and make sure when the pendulum comes back, what have you identified that you can do to actively fight and have an impact?
Yeah, and I want to second that. Like my mom will call me all in a tizzy about the latest thing, and she just absolutely marinates in watching the cable news outrages on YouTube mainly. And I tell her, I'd say, Mom, either do something, right? Like call your representatives. If you have money, donate money. If you have time, donate time, either to helping people hurt or defeating the hurters, slowing them down or letting them know what's happening and that you're noticing and that it's, you disagree, or getting out into the streets. But in whatever way you can contribute, do that. And then when you're not doing that, don't worry about it.
Here's the problem. And I'm going to tell both of you right now, here's the problem. People don't know what to do or how to do it. And I'm the same way. I literally had to, you guys know Ash. I was texting him. I was like, what do I do? Do I like volunteer? Do I write letters? And he said, I'm going to send you a friend of mine's number. Just call her. And she does a lot of volunteer work in Nashville and she can hook you up with anybody. And I was like, I kind of doubt it. I text her and I shit you not. She just rattled off like 10 organizations around Nashville that I could like work with. And she was like, what do you do? And I said, construction. She was like, oh, well, there's this program through these schools. I know this person that does, they work with students to get into trades. There's also the Associated General Contractors here in Nashville. It's a union of general contractors. There's so many different paths, but people don't know how or what to do with all that energy. And so what do? They go online and they type things angrily.
Yeah, I think it's just that old saw about, think globally, act locally. I almost feel like, trite when I say it, but I do feel like, you have to recognize your own limitations, right? Like you're not going to be able to single-handedly right this wrong, but millions of people or hundreds of thousands of people pushing in the same direction toward the same goal can make a change. The thing about it is that the politicians, when they do something and when they pass a huge tax cut and they get one phone call about it, they're thinking, I got away with it, right? But if they do something and they hear 1,000 calls a day or 10,000 calls in a week or something, they're like, oh, I stepped in it. I gotta figure this out. People are like, you let them know that you've noticed. And of course, that's not the only way, but I do think that like you have to be intentional with your energy. And you have to say, how am I going to either I need to make a material contribution, time, money, making, phone calls, volunteering, whatever, or you just need to live your life and not worry about it. But like angsting over it is just throwing just throwing your energy and your attention down the shitter.
I think that's a pretty good summary. I'm going to say it, Ryan. I'm going to say it for you. Case closed. Don't consume news 24/7. Actually get out and do something. Corey, what's your next topic?
So the next topic I have is I've just been thinking a lot about electric vehicles, and we talked, I think pre-recording, we talked about just the collapse of Tesla worldwide. So that's one. It's sort of a conglomeration of things. Two, though, that takes place in the context of larger struggles in the North American market for EVs, which are they're not selling as well. There's been a lot of businesses that have made a huge investment in EVs. A lot of these automakers, and the automakers are finding that the vehicles they have made, which I think have trended to be very large, expensive trucks and SUVs, they are not selling very well, and they're kind of staying on the lots. The inventory is going up, and I don't think necessarily that the infrastructure is there. And so I just kind of want to open up to the floor. What is going on with the EV market here today, and also let's just have a good laugh at Elon because he lost $111 billion, as we discussed earlier.
Here's where I'm going to go with this, because as soon as you said it, I knew what the problem was. I get what Ford and GMC with the Hummer, and because you've seen the new Hummer, the ridiculous 1,000.
Yeah, it's like 10,000 pounds. It's got 1,000 horsepower. Yeah.
I get what they're trying to do. They're trying to show that electric vehicles can replace.
Manly.
Well, they're trying to show that electric vehicles can do the work that your traditional vehicle can do. Like your work truck can be an electric truck. Okay. We don't need that proof. What people want is affordable vehicles. What I want is an affordable electric vehicle that is relatively small, easy to drive around the city. I like the Nissan Leaf. I like the BMW. What is it? They
have an i3, but they haven't sold that in years. I think they have an i4 now, but it's a different vehicle.
I mean, I like the smaller cars, but I'm a white trash piece of shit. I like little hatchbacks. Give me a little electric.
I drive a little hatchback.
Give me a hot hatch, electric style.
Yeah.
Cap it at 25,000, and I'm there. But I don't have $90,000 to spend on an electric truck. Yeah. I don't need a $90,000 electric truck. So yeah, I'm with you. They've poured billions of dollars into developing these EVs that people can't afford, and the whole point, right, with EV is not just like it's obviously good for the environment, but isn't it also because we're not buying gas? Isn't it supposed to be cheaper theoretically?
Yeah, I think the theoretically, and I haven't seen any numbers recently, but my understanding is that the total cost of ownership of an EV over its lifetime will be lower than a gas machine, just because especially you charge at home, the cost of electricity at home per mile is substantially lower than gas.
But here's the thing: if you're paying full price for an electric full size truck F-150, and your monthly payment is surely you guys know some people are paying like $600, $700, $800, $900 a month on their trucks.
Yeah, and they're financing it for 7 years or something like that. Yeah.
If that's what if that's what you go home with, what you have is a truck in the driveway and an insane bill every month. If you're a truck person, if you're a truck guy, you want the V8, you want the diesel. That's what you want. You're not going to replace that. What people actually want is small, cheap cars that are safe. Yeah. So Ford Pinto, sorry, but
yeah.
Oh, wow. Right back to Elon Musk. Holy shit, the Ford Pinto, you recall.
He was born in one.
No.
Okay.
You recall the issue with the Pinto, right?
Yeah, he had a gas tank like underneath the seats in such a way that it would light on fire.
Rear-ended.
When rear-ended, yes.
The gas tank would typically erupt. There have been more Cybertruck fires than Ford Pinto fires. Wow. The Cybertruck is officially more dangerous than the Ford Pinto.
Wow.
And this does not count. This does not count that guy that set off all the fireworks in his.
Right.
And it does not count that dealership in France where
I think I saw that.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not counting those. These are legitimate car fires.
Yeah, car fires. Yeah.
All right. So was there a case? Yeah. No case.
We haven't done case closed yet, but
Ryan, thoughts? You're the EV guy. Yeah. You know more.
Let's talk to an
EVs.
Actual EV owner and get these dilettantes out of here.
Well, I'm a big fan of EVs in some ways, but it's as long as it's part of a general conversation about transportation, because along with that previous comment, 4 months, Montreal, we just moved the car basically because we had to move it from the street for parking rules. We didn't drive. We used transit and walked everywhere. We saw people. I want to live without cars. So the EV discussion, of course, is going to be with us and part of things for a long time. The electrification of mass transit, like what I do at work, it's happening a lot. So I think that's a huge solution that we should be pushing more. But personal car ownership, yes, this is a bridge, but we should always include it in the conversation of how to ultimately get away from cars.
Yeah, I was going to say that electric cars are like the clean needles of transportation. Like it's harm reduction. Right, it's only good because it's better than gas cars, but it's not better than mass transit solutions.
We're still addicted.
We are still addicted
to that
Absolutely.
black tar bow tie.
Black tar bow tie. My band in college.
Now, Ryan, since you're here and you can, I do have to ask. Here's like the nitty gritty, like hardcore conservative. Well, I don't know if you've seen the show. Billy Bob Thornton. He's an oilman. Oh, landsman. It's called Landsman. He's a landsman for an oil company, and he written by the guy that does Yellowstone. I forget his name. He's a piece of shit. Tyler Sheridan. He's a douchebag. Nobody likes him. But he has really good shows. But you can tell Billy Bob Thornton's character does this speech. He's talking about their windmills, right? He's talking about the windmills and how there's so much petroleum used in the grease. There's so much petroleum used in the plastic. The environmental impact of the foundation of the windmill, which, I mean, I work construction. The environmental impact of concrete is, it's huge. But essentially what he's getting at, Billy Bob Thornton gives this long-winded speech about how, fossil fuels are, what makes green energy possible. That's essentially what he gets at. So, Ryan, in my bones, that feels like bullshit, but what the fuck?
Well, so it's not something you should ignore. And another word for all that is embodied carbon. So the embodied carbon of lithium-based storage, for example, like either stationary storage, which you see everywhere now, utility scale storage. By the way, that's the next big thing we have to solve is storage. But so it's not that it's nothing, but there's an environmental payback. It was less than 2 years on solar, for example. So the solar panels are made of a lot of components. They're all shipped. It takes energy to produce them, that kind of stuff. So it's not that from day one, but I think it was less than 2 years. So those panels are usually warranted at like 20 to 25 years. So it's part of the conversation, but it's nowhere as dramatic as that scene.
The second part of that, speaking of storage, but also the power grid, is the power grid capable of harnessing the trillions of gigawatts of power that are going to be produced by all this clean energy? Well, because that's the hardcore conservative rebuttal or contrarian point of view is our infrastructure can't handle all that electricity. So that's a thing that people say.
It's a huge thing. So distribution
that.
And transmission and upgrades to that grid are one whole topic. This could be a whole podcast in itself, I think.
Okay.
But storage, there's some really interesting storage tech. Pumped hydro is getting a real boost right now. Iron air batteries, grid scale iron air batteries. There's that topic. The costs are just plummeting for it. So I think today it probably is true that we couldn't totally decarbonize the grid with current tech, but it's making rapid advances with probably a 4-year hiatus.
Corey, I'm going to let you do this one because I don't know what we're closing the case on. What are we closing the case on here?
The EV market's in trouble.
No, it's in trouble.
In North America.
It's in trouble.
I think, I do think it's not growing at the exponential rate that I, as somebody who wants to live on a planet that is not cooking itself to death, would like to see.
That makes sense why I couldn't follow along, because I've been told that it's
a Chinese hoax.
Is it in decline? Is it?
So it's still going up. EV as a sale market is still going up, but you're no longer seeing that logarithmic exponential growth that you saw at least when the early adopters kicked in. And I just feel like the market's in trouble. Of course, the whole economy is going to be in trouble soon. But I think the EV market in particular is in trouble. And I think that's case closed.
Case closed. The market's in trouble. All right, back to me. All right, I cheated again. I just took a headline from NPR because I figured, hey, I'm going to go to NPR and I bet that I can find exactly what I need. So I took this headline. Quote, President Trump brings back practice of detaining families together. Here we go. Case closed. Kids in cages. Who did it first? Obama, Bush, Trump? I don't give a fuck. Stop detaining whole ass families. Here are my qualifications for citizenship of this country. Do you pay taxes? Yes, then citizen. If yes, you pay taxes, then you are a citizen. Every time this comes up, it is orphan crushing machine all over again. Immigrant families kept together in detention. That's not good. Why are we detaining children? Why are we detaining whole families? Why are we disturbing their lives with raids and relocations? Taxpayers get to stay in this country. We have more billionaires and millionaires gaming the system than immigrants. Immigrants pay more taxes, not collectively, but they pay their taxes. whereas millionaires and billionaires do not pay their complete tax burden.
There were reports during the first Trump administration that they commissioned a study that was going to look into how much immigrants cost on net society. And when it came back that immigrants actually pay more into our like various tax bases and social welfare systems than they get out, so they were actually a net positive, the report was suppressed. And of course, because it was suppressed, this is all just reports, but it would not surprise me because immigrants come here. They are literally and figuratively hungry. They are all, they're all able-bodied because they made it here. They're working age, and they come and they work very, very hard for not a lot of money, and that's not great for them. But if you're somebody who is not them, they are making your life better, directly or indirectly. Your meat is cheaper. Your gardening is cheaper. Your construction is cheaper.
And on this topic right here, it is so disingenuous when you give examples of the real jobs that immigrant workers do, like literally construction, gardening, house cleaning. It is so disingenuous for people to say, oh, all you see them as is labor. No. That is all our society, our whole capitalist structure sees them as. That is how they are used. And I don't remember which one I sent to you, but I sent one of you the book, No Wall They Can Build.
Yeah, I read that.
And
I read that.
My favorite part of that book, not my favorite, but I think the most impactful, is that as far as immigration is concerned, Border Patrol, Department of Homeland Security, they know the regular routes that are taken to get into this country.
Yeah, that stuck with me as well.
Like the fact that it is illegal to leave water in the desert for people who are making that journey. And there are like known stops. There are regular stops where you would put water. There are water drops, and Border Patrol knows where the water drops are. And we know we put them there because that is a known route. If you wanted to stop immigration right now today, all you would have to do is go to the Border Patrol and say, hey, where are they coming in at? And they'd be like, well, right here. And then you just, all right, stop them right there. We're not doing that. If we actually wanted to stop immigration, you could shut it down. The body has a way of shutting this thing down.
I get that reference.
But that's what's crazy to me is like, why are we wasting resources detaining families who live in their communities, work in their communities, pay taxes for their communities, pay federal taxes that they will never see a return on? They're literally paying for Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. They are paying into that. They'll never get anything out of it.
Well, I mean, every fascist movement needs a scapegoat.
It is so heartbreaking that we have these stories about detaining children, detaining families, breaking families up, keeping families together, putting kids in cages, all this shit. Either of y'all want to take that? Because I'm just going to case close it.
I just want to add that, like, I have not seen reports yet about the family separation policy where they were like lying to parents in the first Trump administration. They would take, oh, we're going to go take them and like give them a bath or something, or go weigh them or something. And then they would just be gone, and like the parent wouldn't know what happened, and they had no way of getting those kids back. There was nobody tracking that information. I have not seen that yet. And I didn't know if either of you had.
Well, let's on that topic, because I already fucking closed the case.
Oh, close the
on
case.
Russia
Sorry.
and Ukraine. Okay. But fucking Russia, you know what they do? You know what they
reopened the case.
We're going to reopen that fucking case, and we're going to bring it right into immigration.
Oh yeah, because they're stealing Ukrainian children.
I tell you, goddamn what? That's exactly what the fuck they do. They detain Ukrainian citizens, women, children, men, the elderly, and they take them to quote unquote camps to like treat them, like
to concentrate them,
to sort them. And they go through like a North Korean like brainwashing thing, and then they get relocated to a place in Russia. That's what was happening at the beginning of the Ukrainian war.
Yeah.
If that's not happening, where the Russian army is advancing, when they take over a town, like where they occupy, they essentially are negating their citizenship in that town or city by installing their own Russian sympathizing mayor or whatever. The fact that we even report on detaining immigrants and their families and like relocate them, the fact that we report on it like it's a thing, like a normal thing, it's not. It's an act of, it's a war crime that is used by the bad guys.
Yeah, well, it reminds me of an assertion I saw recently that's really stuck with me, which is that fascism is what we call colonialism when it happens to white people.
Ryan, anything to add?
I think it's case closed. It was actually one of my 5 topics, supporting immigrants, because of all the other things you could do, it's something tangible. And there's the Tennessee Immigrant and Refugee Rights Coalition, TIRRC, here, that does some pretty good work. We've supported them for years. And something my wife and I were looking at is, Tennessee is about to, it's going to like the Tennessee Senate, where they might make it impossible for the children of undocumented immigrants to go to school.
Yeah,
it hasn't passed, but
it passed one round.
It passed the House.
Yeah,
yeah. So, and my wife's done tutoring in a past life, and I could probably do something. I at least speak English. I don't know, but we're gonna try to. That's one of the ways we thought. Very good. Yeah, it's passable. So what I'm going to do, I already have the email typed because we haven't sent it because it hasn't passed, but we're going to email TIRRC to see if there are options to tutor or do something for these kids who are going to all of a sudden not be able to go to schools.
Case closed. Do not detain families. Who's got the next topic?
I'll go, unless you want to go, Ryan.
No, go for it.
Okay. FAFO.
Oh, fuck around and find out.
Fuck around and find out. Yeah. I knew this was going to happen, and I'm not proud, but the whole genre of regretful Trump voters has become kind of like chicken soup for the soul. It's something, of course, I think some of them are actors, but occasionally they look real. And is this real, we talked a little bit beforehand, but there's this very confusing thing where people have invented, and I guess it's maybe based on the television character of Donald Trump that he played, on The Apprentice, but they've invented a perfect guy in their head. That's
you
the
tell me
perfect
that
president.
wasn't a documentary.
I'm pretty sure reality show is used. The term reality there is kind of used loosely. But I feel like now we are in the find out phase, that there are millions of people, and I've thought this for a long time, that most Republican voters don't want most Republican policies. And I think the same thing is true for Donald Trump. And it gets to kind of a larger problem with American politics, which is a very large number of people who vote and who participate, at least let's just say voters, don't understand that policies are the result of politics, and that the policies are the things that actually have direct material impact on their lives. And I just want to hear your guys' thoughts about that genre of entertainment. Am I alone here? Do you guys enjoy those? And then 2, what is up with the psychology of the American people, where they take this so unserious that, for instance, you might say you're voting on the economy, but if I ask 100 people, okay, well, what's your opinion on the Federal Open Market Commission's setting of core interest rates? I'd say about 95 to 99% of those people would look at me like I grew a third head. And so you have a very large number.
Because you already have 2.
Yeah.
I get it.
So, but I think a very large number of people, it's almost like we've become a nation of Dunning-Kruger effect. They think they're voting about X, but they don't know anything about X. And so when the policies come down and they're just surprised, or they say, I didn't really think that he would do the thing he said he was going to do. I mean, we kind of circled back to the leopards eating people's faces party, but they're getting hurt. And so I just want to hear from you guys on that.
I'm going to let Ryan, I'm going to let you go first.
Well, something that comes to mind is a book called Nudge, which talks about a lot of very interesting things. But one of the studies in it was they took groups, cohorts of people, and picked policy positions that were they didn't have any obvious leaning left or right. So one of them was, should corporations who have their headquarters in a different country be taxed at their location of their headquarters, or where most of their workforce is? So that question has no obvious left or right answer. And so then what they did in these cohorts is they had people who were obvious kind of setting anchoring positions, these people. So what they showed over a series of experiments and a series of topics is they could get entire groups of people to vote one way or another based on if they knew the political opinion of the first person who spoke. And it was like a research foundation for tribalism. And so it's what you were talking about reminds me of that. Is like how do people who have remorse now? This isn't the first time. It seems to keep repeatedly happening. Well, it goes back to something that's talked about a lot, and just how tribalism works. So I don't know if it's not really a direct response, but do you think this time it could get bad enough that there will be any lessons and it could change?
I actually have a question for you on that. I mean, was there any suggestion in that book that that their opinion could change after they had made it, based on?
I don't know that. I don't recall that.
I was going to say I have heard of it, and I forget. I don't know if it has like a official name, but I've heard of a method of canvassing where the whole idea is you start with a personal connection. You start with, abortion rights are really important for me because I had an abortion, or I knew somebody had an abortion, and it's allowed me, and you have this conversation where you start not with a big broad topic, not with the societal level topics, but you start with like a personal thing. And it's very time consuming. But what they found with this genre of political canvassing was that they could change minds much better than, any other form. It just was this really intensive person to person emotive methodology.
Are you telling me that human to human interaction actually has an effect?
I hope not, because I work from home, but I think it might.
I'm gonna get to the find out part in a minute, but I am going to go off on a tangent here about that. I have this theory that I could run for office, and it doesn't matter what party I align with, but I have this feeling that if I went door to door and said, "What do you want to see in government?" and had a conversation and listened and actually took notes and wrote things down, and then, like canvassed the neighborhood, got their opinions, and then came back like a second time to talk to them. And so I listened to what you said and what your neighbors said. And this is what I've come up with. What do you think? I feel like that right there, that's a whole lot more work, but I feel like that's what you have to do. And I feel like that would be way more effective than just the talking points. I feel like that would defeat tribalism. It's still somewhat tribalism, right? Because it's in their neighborhood. But that's actually local and pertinent to them.
Yeah, well, I think it does seem like local governance. This is, again, like a bit of a tangent, but just go down that rabbit hole with you. Like local governance, you're almost sort of hemmed in by like the physical day-to-day realities, like the immediate, well, we got to get this thing passed. We got to build that bridge. We got, there's a kind of a known dynamic where, if you want to do, to find the really crazy people or to find the people who are selected for being able to act crazy, you have to go to that national, that federal level.
One of my favorite takeaways from the book, The Ideological Origins of the American Revolution, was that when it came to determining how they were going to select their representatives, House of Representatives and your senators, there was someone gave the opinion like, you don't want your local tavern keeper to be your senator because he's going to come in and he's going to talk about like, his local community needs, a new ditch dug, and all he's going to talk about is ditches or foxes or whatever. And we're talking about global trade. So we need businessmen to be in the Senate. And the little tavern keeper can be like a local representative, but we need like permanent senatorial appointments. Yeah, I don't know. Is senatorial a word?
Yeah, roll with it.
Nice. And so that was their argument against letting the plebeians
right. Well, because initially the state House of Representatives or the state Congress legislature, that's the word I'm looking for, they would elect the Senate. That was changed via constitutional amendment. I want to go back to a question that Ryan posed I think is really interesting, which is, are the American people going to react with enough force to this that, one, it could be stopped? For every action, there are reactions.
I have an answer.
And I am not super hopeful, but on the other hand, you do have angry town halls in deep red districts. So, I'll never count them out completely. But on the other hand, we've put up with a lot so far.
Here, all right, I'm going to get to the find out part of your question, and then I'm going to address how much will we take before we fight back and what that will look like. All right, so find out. I have 0 schadenfreude for the Republicans who voted for Trump and are being negatively impacted by them. I get 0.
Well, now I feel bad.
I get 0 satisfaction watching people lose their jobs, the price of medication going up, insulin, inhalers. I don't want that for anybody, which is why I did not vote for Trump. And you mentioned this earlier before we started the podcast. People will listen to Trump and they will hear what they want to hear. And even if he's saying that he will take away their jobs or he will make medicine more expensive, that's not what they're responding to. They're responding to whatever distraction he's thrown out there that they feel most strongly about. That's not their fault because he has tapped into whatever their deepest fears or hatred. He has exploited that and used it against them. And I don't get any pleasure from that. Now, I will say some instances are funny, but it's like a very specific case-by-case basis. And off the top of my head, there's not a really good one that stands out. Oh, no, actually, no, there is one. The National Association of Home Builders, heavily Trump, they literally sent Trump a letter telling him that with the first round of tariffs that his tariffs are going to raise the cost of new home prices. And, I used to be a home builder. No fucking shit. When you say you're going to put tariffs on Canadian imports, that's construction materials. Mexican imports, that's construction materials. Taiwan chips, that's everything in your smart home. No fucking shit. But the National Association of Home Builders was like, hey, you should probably make an exception for us. Yeah, well, maybe you shouldn't have given him your fucking money.
Yeah. And that's really, individuals, let me just shamefully walk that back. But like individuals, no. But like, yeah, these like larger things where you're like, wait, you're voting on inflation or you're supporting because you're angry about inflation. But his top 2 bullet points, which are deporting working age people and raising taxes on things that cross the border, which is basically everything except your like your like flesh and blood body. Everything else crosses borders all the time. Those are all inflationary policies. And yeah, so when you have entire industries that support him, and now we're finding out.
I'm not going to walk it back, but even just reflecting now on what I've said, people have had their deepest fears or even prejudices exploited. That's still not good. Even if a racist is appealed to through his racism, right? The most disgusting part of his or her entire personality is being exploited. But then you go and now they can't afford their diabetes. You might say, yeah, that person deserves it. But that's like punishing everybody just to get to that one guy.
Yeah, no. That wouldn't be the way I would
And
take
don't get me
it,
wrong, fuck racists.
Right.
Maybe when they are getting their cheap insulin and they're doing the needle thing, maybe they can get like a air embolism and die when they do it, but they should still have affordable insulin.
Yeah, it should be an affordable defective insulin. But I feel like, this kind of ties into a larger conversation.
That's going to come back to bite me in the ass.
You think so?
I don't know, maybe.
But I do think that's part of a larger conversation. But, essentially, like, racism is not only about hurting, minorities. It's also about keeping the white working class in line, right? Like there's these great social science experiments that show that when someone's at the next to bottom rung of society or any kind of perception of wealth or socioeconomic status, they will do anything they can to avoid the feeling that they are now at the bottom. And I think that wealthy white people, that the elites have used the specter of black people being equal with you to keep working white, people in line for basically since was it Bacon's Rebellion?
Yeah. All right. So now to answer your question, what was it was something about how much will we take? Is that right?
Yeah. Well, it was Ryan's question. He posed a question that's been on my mind a lot, which is will the American people react to stop this in any kind of mass way?
Yeah. So we have an example. We have a precedent, not here in the States, but everywhere else that's gone through mass uprisings. But I'm going to focus on Ukraine again, with the Orange Revolution or the Euromaidan, which is where I can't even remember his name, who was the president. He was essentially a Russian stooge who was installed. Yeah, Yanukovych.
Yeah, Yanukovych.
Basically, Ukrainians hated him because he was a Russian asset. He was Trump. And the protests, interestingly enough, there's a research paper done on them. The protests started as a coalition of students, LGBT, labor unions, as well as ultra conservative, right wing, and even like white supremacist party groups all getting together because they all hated Yanukovych and they wanted him out of office. And I bring this up because there was an excellent meme that a Ukrainian posted on Reddit, and it was just a picture of tires, a pile of tires. And they said, "You Americans are going to need this. You'll understand when it's time." And the Euromaidan or Orange Revolution was most notably accented or accentuated or highlighted by a shitload of burning tires in the nation's capital in Kiev. And that is, I think, that's where we go from here. And I don't say that lightly. You know, the guy, I don't know if you've seen the documentary Tread, the guy that built the killdozer and did a rampage through his town. I think it was in Colorado. No? Oh my gosh.
Did I hear you right? Did I hear you say killdozer?
Yeah.
I feel like that needs more explanation.
He took a Caterpillar bulldozer and he basically armor plated it himself with additional steel plates and infilled a lot of body panels with concrete.
America.
And he put in like a CCTV cameras, like front, back, sides. He had been getting into a bunch of bureaucratic bullshit with the city over his property, his business property, and they were trying to seize some of his property. Like his neighboring guy was trying to like take some of his property. The city was trying to condemn it. They were all like corrupt and working against him, and he like just kept getting dicked around by the city. So he disappeared for a while and he built this killdozer. And then one day he was like, "I've had it." And he just went on a rampage through his town and just tore through buildings, tore through cars. Like cops were shooting it. They couldn't stop it because, you know, it's armored with steel. Like I think it was like 1/2-inch plate steel and concrete. And just goes on an absolute fucking rampage. It happened. Oh shit. I think it happened after like the day after 9/11 or something, or the day before.
Smooth. That's why it didn't hit the mainstream news.
So it got picked up and then like, yeah. Or it was a school shooting. I can't remember. It's sad that we have no idea what tragedy
happened when. Yeah.
But anyway, Killdozer, the documentary is Tread. And I bring that up along with burning tires. But also, if you recall Christmas a couple of years ago, somebody set off the bomb downtown here in Nashville.
To kill the 5G lizard people.
Yeah. And that's what's going to happen. It's going to be some brand of American ingenuity that nobody's going to see coming. It's going to be some random ass event that's going to be targeted at whatever the fuck is going on. And it's going to be an extreme event. But that event will rally more people. Like there will be an inciting event. I don't think it will be civil war. I think it will be revolution. And I know that sounds weird, but I don't think that even Trump would be able to have the military fire upon U.S. citizens.
So you think it'll be kind of like, wasn't there like a farmer, not a farmer's like a produce stall vendor in Syria and maybe Damascus, or maybe it was Tunisia, but like the Arab Spring did not, or which has not gone particularly well, but the Arab Spring, I believe, is widely credited to have kind of been ignited by a single vendor at a produce market lighting himself on fire out of frustration.
That I can't speak to.
Yeah. Anyway, just kind of reminds me of an inciting event.
Yeah.
So.
But there will be one, and it will be particularly American, like the Killdozer. But it might also involve burning tires. I mean, just think of the random.
I think Luigi Mangione was one?
I think he was too soon.
Too soon.
If we're totally honest.
Yeah. Yep.
And honestly, I think his target was too obscure.
Yeah.
Like, don't get me wrong, that as a symbolic gesture, that makes total sense. And by the also, we need to say alleged, right?
Alleged. Yeah.
Because honestly, there's no way he could have done it because he and I were playing backgammon online.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like I was there with. I mean, it's crazy. That's not
right.
That's not my guy. You got the wrong guy.
Yeah.
It's not my guy.
Yeah.
But
we're playing Monopoly.
Yeah.
He couldn't have left the Monopoly money there in his backpack. It was your game.
That's
you
right.
still have your Monopoly money.
America, we can figure something out. We'll get behind something.
I'm down with the Killdozer. I mean,
but honestly, what's going to
only for good.
What's going to happen is is interesting because the result of the Euromaidan uprising was their relatively newly renovated parliament and presidential elections, but the student and like left-leaning liberal component of that was kind of erased from all of that. Go figure. And so then you have issues like the Azov battalion in the Ukraine.
Yeah, I was
military,
thinking of
which
them.
was white supremacy that eventually got absorbed into the Ukrainian military and is no longer like an extreme right-wing faction. It's just now a battalion of the army with the same name. But it doesn't matter because yes, Nazis.
Yeah.
But which we already closed the book on. Nazis are bad.
Yeah.
Fuck Nazis.
They keep trying to reopen that book, I've noticed.
Yeah. Are we case closing on Find Out?
Yeah.
Ryan, did you have anything else?
Tangentially related, Herbert Hoover gave us FDR. So I think who wasn't perfect, but expansive, a progressive era in American history. If we survive these next 2 years, that's the way this has to go. This is the pendulum getting stuck in the wrong spot, but we're gonna get a way past where we got with Obama on the counter response.
Yeah, I mean, the question is will capitalism do what it did after 1929 and try to save itself by actually feeding the sheep that they have to shear, or will the whole system just?
Honestly, I can see it going either way.
50-50, case closed.
All right. My next topic. Also cheated again. Sorry, guys. 5D chess. This is just something that was swimming around in my head. I am personally done with the overanalysis of any and all of Trump's policies. It's part of the process of normalizing his whole Project 2025 thing. And there's another thing. A few weeks back, there was a headline saying that Trump's executive orders looked a lot like the plan from Project 2025. No fucking shit, because it is. He lied. That's what he does. He lies and he fucks shit up. I wouldn't even say he has a surface level understanding of basic governance. He's barely literate, and he has no idea how government works. Smart people are seeing Trump's actions, and they are reading too much into them. Trump hates us, and he loves money. That's why he does everything. Everything he does is a grift. It's not complicated. He's not complicated. Fuck him. He's not playing 5D chess. Case closed. Stop fucking editorializing. Stop adding intelligence to him with your think piece in The Atlantic. Like, he is not complicated. Yeah, the shit he's fucking up, that gets complicated. But Trump is a fucking imbecile.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that in general, the very wealthy are characterized by the same fundamental logic as microorganisms. And what a microorganism does is it grows and consumes until it hits a physical barrier. Okay, if you took a single bacterium and it never ran out of food, it never hit a kind of biological limit, it would just fill the whole universe. It would just grow exponentially. And rich people, I think, like the extreme hyper wealthy, they operate on the same principle. I'm going to grow and control as much as I can until I hit an external limit. When I hit that limit, I'm going to start metabolizing it, and if I can see if I can overcome it. And then once I've overcome that, I'm going to keep going, and I'm going to keep going. And Donald Trump is just the rawest distillation. He's the least refined of that species. But I see it everywhere now. I mean, what kind of psychopath do you have to be to have enough money to make the next 1,000 people you meet millionaires and decide, I need more money. I need more power. I need more control. I mean, to be worth...
Not just that, to make the millionaires and still be a billionaire.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, now worth, I guess, somewhere south of 300 billion, but let's just say 300 billion. I mean, that means that he could make 1,000 millionaires and still have 299. By the time he made 1,000 millionaires, he would have already made back more than the amount of money he just spent, unless we've all stopped buying his cars, in which case he wouldn't. But
the government is not capitalism. Government cannot be capitalism. We have a government separate from the economy. Like, that's it. I think that billionaires, when they get $1 billion, they should get a plaque.
Like a YouTuber, when they get like 1 million subscribers.
They should get $1 billion. They should get a plaque from the government that says, congratulations, you beat capitalism. And then every single dollar over $1 billion just goes straight to the government, period. Or...
So the Roosevelt tax brackets.
Yeah, exactly. And that's another thing. When we're talking about Make America Great, do they have any idea what the fuck they're talking about? We had a 95% tax rate at the end of World War II on the highest income earners.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I mean...
But they weren't the only ones. The people who actually fucking carried this country were the poor. They paid 22% income tax at the end of World War II. It was high.
Yeah.
Or maybe it might have been... No, I'm going to go with 22 because that's a lower number. I was thinking it might be 30, but I think it was 22. At the end of World War II, everybody was paying higher taxes. If you're talking about the 1950s, Make America Great Again, great. Let's do that. Let's go back to that tax policy when billionaires were being taxed 90%. Yeah, because fuck them. They have too much money.
I mean, that kind of goes to, like, we had a middle class because the leaders of the country decided to make a middle class. Like, they passed pro-middle class policies, and then we had a middle class. Of course, we also had, like, you know, most of the world's remaining industrial base after World War II. But still, there was an intentional desire to make a middle class. Policies were passed in pursuit of that, at least for a white middle class. And then suddenly we had a middle class.
We also had strategically positioned the dollar after World War II. But
Are we talking about Bretton Woods?
Yeah. Okay. But I already did a whole season on that. So
yeah, we can't do that again.
Case closed on that.
Case closed.
You have anything to say on 5D chess?
No. I think it's case closed. Biff became president.
Case closed. Perfect. All right. Who's next?
Okay, I got one. Taxes, good or bad? And the reason I thought of that is there's a recent I don't even know where it was. It was one of the many articles on how the Swedes view taxes, and it's kind of that common idea when you know what you're getting, you value the social programs, you value stability. Taxes aren't necessarily a bad thing, and I've always thought that I recognize the purpose of taxes. The U.S. overspending on the military, you kind of always question it. Now, though, with the current administration, I don't want to give them a penny. So, but it got me thinking about, okay, well, during the time when we had more progressive presidents, like during the Obama years, you can see from a conservative mindset why they hate taxes during that, because it's going to things that are so opposed to what they think their beliefs are. So I guess the question is, how do you guys view taxes, both just kind of philosophically, but then now during this type of presidency?
I look at taxes as the price of admission that we pay for the security of having an overall government. And in that sense, I think they are good. And I think that we should be happy to be able to pay taxes to live in a nation with good security. Like, I think that is like the fundamental need of a government, like a federal government. But we have very little control over how those taxes are used. And that is appalling. Like, the people who pay the taxes need services from the government. That's the price of admission. And what do we get in return? Not a whole lot. So I like taxes from a security standpoint, but we need healthcare. We need free education. We need to make sure kids are getting fed. We need to make sure that homeless people have homes. Mental health care needs to be addressed. We have so much, that there's that saying that conservatives like to say about making donations and stuff, like take care of your own before you spend money in Africa, that kind of thing. I don't disagree with that, but we have royally fucked up spending money at home and taking care of people at home. We don't prioritize that.
Yeah, on the question of taxes itself, I think, Ryan was getting at an idea that I've also been having, which is like when you pay your taxes, it's going to things you disagree with, like, what kind of sort of moral complicity do you have? And I think, but that's always been true. Like, I think, when you take the U.S. military's own numbers, someone crunched it one day about how many bombs the U.S. government drops on a given day, and it's in the dozens or more. I forget the expression. It might even be in the low three figures, but essentially, on average per day, the U.S. government drops an enormous number of bombs over the past, like, in the War on Terror era. So essentially, it's been going on like our entire adult lives, longer, and probably even before that, where, when you pay taxes. So the core question, I don't have an answer, in terms of, obviously, like, I had that thought. I was like, I don't want to pay taxes now because this guy, is evil. But on the other hand, there are many people doing good work. But on the other hand, on the third hand, Joseph once gave me a book on modern monetary theory, and now I won't shut up about it. And it kind of addresses this
because all the numbers are made up and
the points don't matter.
Points don't matter.
Well, it gets to this very interesting thing where when you owe money, Ryan, you owe it in dollars, right? But imagine that you paid all your debts in Ryan bucks, and you had a Ryan printing press in your basement. Then really the constraint is if you print too many, people won't think they're worth anything. And so taxes within modern monetary theory, I'm dramatically oversimplifying, but they're essentially used to draw that money back out. So you start taxing people Ryan bucks. You say, you want to register your car, you want to park your car in the street, that's going to be 10 Ryan bucks. And you just take that money and you just burn it. I mean, it doesn't even matter what you do with it. But you don't actually,
it's your money. You don't need it.
But you don't actually take that money and go do anything with it, because all you need when you need money, you just go to your Ryan printing press and you print out more Ryan bucks. You don't have a vault. You just like, you have your fire pit in your backyard. You're like, I guess I'll just use these Ryan bucks that I got from the guy down the street to park his car. I'm going to use those Ryan bucks tax dollars to start my fire, because it doesn't matter. I'll just print out more when I need them. And the U.S. government is the same thing. Our money is delineated in its own currency. We don't owe like Swiss francs or something. We owe U.S. dollars, but we print U.S. dollars. And how do we loan out money? We make a yellow dollar bill and we call it a treasury note. Or a bond rather. It's bonds, yeah, like a yellow bond, and we have green backs and we have essentially yellow backs, but they're both just printed and made up from the U.S. government.
The yellow is unripe money.
Unripe money, yeah. It's like a reverse banana, and so the question of taxes. I think one of the functions of taxes is that we need to prevent individuals from aggregating the power and wealth of a nation state by taxing the hell out of people beyond a certain tax bracket, aka our billionaires, right? And of course, this gets to like worker productivity has been through the roof for the last 50 years, but like adjusted for like inflation, pay has been stagnant, so which is a whole separate conversation.
To make more sense of what I was saying, I believe in syndicalism, and so I would look at taxes more being like dues paid to be in that union.
Yeah,
and I do believe that it is possible to have a system of governance based off of literally unions acting in the interest of themselves with other unions. And everybody that works should be in a union, period. Like office workers should be unionized. Like,
oh yeah, for sure. I didn't sign up for serfdom.
Cleaning people should be unionized. There should be, we have the IWW, International Workers of the World, which is basically a union for everybody. And that is essentially how I think that we should be organized, not necessarily as a central government, but as a bunch of connected unions. But yeah, taxes are the dues that we pay to be part of this literal union of states.
And I'm a big believer that those who benefit most from a service should pay the most into it. And one way to know how much you're benefiting from civilization is look how much more money you have than a hunter-gatherer. The broader the gap between you and a hunter-gatherer in total wealth, the more you're benefiting from civilization. And that's my last little soapbox. Until the next topic, then I'll have a new soapbox.
Taxes are good. Case closed. Perfect. Well,
I still think it depends. That's a tough one to close. It's too circumstantial.
Your Honor, I move for a mistrial.
Yeah, I think this jury's hung.
Well hung, my friend.
Well hung.
You got another one?
Yeah, this one's going to be a real quick one. I think that people on the left and Democrats and, thus people in the center right, I guess, as well, we're too hung up on what we think we're arguing about. And so we always have this tendency to be like, there's a logical inconsistency here. Like that's hypocritical. If you really cared about education, you wouldn't do this. If you really cared about kids, you wouldn't do this. And it's almost like a I gotcha moment, but it doesn't matter because you're not actually arguing about what you think you're arguing about. And so my case closed here is stop using accusations of hypocrisy as some kind of debating point, like it gets you any points. There's nothing there, right? Nobody cares. It has no purchase. Okay. Also, you need to get, and like we discussed earlier, you need to get to what are you actually arguing about? But hypocrisy is not going to do anybody any good. Mom, stop calling me and give me those talking points. I understand. Yes, they don't really believe in the things they say they're believing in. We all know. We got to move on.
I'm going to say it. Case closed. Corey's mom, stop calling him and complaining about hypocrisy. No,
Thank you.
It's
Thank you.
not a thing.
But she does think I'm pretty.
Corey's mom, please keep calling Corey and telling him that he's pretty. Now on this, I did the bare minimum. I only brought 5 topics, so I'm going to open up to you guys. What else you got? Case closed. Cases to close? Have we closed all the cases?
I had one last one.
Nice.
And for a long time, climate has been viewed as kind of a position, like a privileged topic in some ways. And I've done some climate conferences in DC, and it's a lot of middle to upper age white people at those. So you can kind of see where that comes from. But Noam Chomsky years ago referred to the modern Republican Party, which I think it was Bush at the time he said it, as an existential threat to humanity. And he wasn't doing that to be ideological. He meant because of their position on climate and their beholdenness to the oil industry, they're quite literally existentially threatening to because of climate change. Yeah. With the enormous just avalanche of other issues, and with something so immediate and real as the immigrants you work with, when stuff's so visceral, what space is there for things that are still very important, but it feels like it's even less of a priority now?
I think climate is a fundamental priority that encompasses things like immigration. I mean, for example, even off the topic of climate change specifically, the fact that we need to protect natural resources for indigenous people is a huge consideration, not just in America, but literally all around the world. I mean, I'm sure you have you've been to India, right? Did you go to one of their densely populated metropolitan cities that has a bunch of trash everywhere?
Oh, you betcha.
Yeah. Is it the Ganges River that is full of waste? You see the pictures circulating online and journals of people just defecating straight into the river. You can't even see the water. It's just full of trash. We have landfills we talked about the landfill in Kenya. That is, they've made efforts to implement a recycling program there. It's hazardous to human health, and everybody dumps their trash there. We have little to no regulation on where we send our waste. Just what to do with all of the trash we create. Chemical waste, industrial waste, all of these things tie together. And the people who are impacted the most by climate change, pollution, they're all the poorest of us. They suffer the most because they don't have the means to escape it. When river towns flood, like in the Amazon, it's the poor people that live near that river, that use that river for their water needs. Those are the people who are impacted. When there's oil spills from pipelines that go into rivers, those indigenous people are the ones who are impacted. It is climate and environment are fundamental to protecting the poorest on the planet. And Noam Chomsky came up with that phrase and it stuck with it, and it is 100% true. But I would go a step further and say that our industrialized societies are an existential threat to humanity. I'm not advocating for a regression of technology. We have really fucked up. We have fucked ourselves into a corner with pollution and climate change.
Well, I used to know these numbers, can't remember it, but immigration into Europe and also through our southern border, a lot of that you can consider them climate refugees.
Yeah.
And there was some point where there was a tipping point where there were more climate refugees than war refugees. So I guess for me the case closed is we have to keep connecting the dots of how, like, kind of like what you said, how interrelated all this stuff is. I know when they do surveying and polling, even among liberal groups, climate change consistently is pretty low. It's like it's below 10. It's like number 20 in terms of what they're actually paying attention to. So to me, it's case closed. Of course, there's a lot of stuff to tackle, but we got to keep connecting the dots and keep that topic front and center.
I was just going to say that this conversation is touching on something I think about a lot, especially when conspiracy theorists spin yarns about climate change being a fake issue designed to usher in world government or pass socialist policies or what have you, is the idea that we would convince human beings to do anything with a nameless or with a tasteless, odorless, unseeable gas that pits you against the oil industry in a strength contest. That's not how human beings are motivated. Human beings are motivated by enemies with a face and funny hats that speak funny languages and are scary. Human beings are motivated by bumps in the night and fangs and claws, because that's our evolutionary history. We're not motivated by odorless, tasteless gases that make cargo vroom. Like, that's just not something that we're wired to pay attention to. But you're right that I think I heard the term hyperobject. Climate change is a hyperobject. It's so big, so massive, so complex, and it touches essentially every other issue. It touches disease, it touches immigration, it touches war and peace, it touches food, it touches everything. The scariest thing I've heard recently, and this is just a tangent, but like the human body, like most mammals, is 98.6 degrees. Do you guys know why we are so hot? To kill germs. And we've turned the earth into a training ground to teach pathogens and fungus and other pathogens how to survive at 98.6 degrees. So every year that climate gets worse, our body temperature it's like a moat drying up, and all the animals on the other side of all the pathogens on the other side of the moat, and every year that moat gets lower and lower, and more pathogens make their way across and start attacking human beings. And of course, other mammals as well. But, so it's a hyper object. It's so big, it's almost like beyond our comprehension. And in a scary way, it almost feels like an issue perfectly designed to evade our notice.
I feel like for deniers, it is the sheer size that is what's so difficult to comprehend. Like, how can humans have an impact on the entire globe? That is impossible. And yet,
I've heard that before.
And yet, we have managed to cover every square foot of the globe.
With plastic.
Except with plastic, yeah. We've inhabited nearly everywhere except for Antarctica, and even then we do.
Yeah. Well, I was referred to on 9/11 over cities. They stopped air travel over the entire United States for a while. And during that time, the elimination of jet contrails from above cities rose the temperatures noticeably on those days that no air travel was allowed. And that's not directly related to climate change, but it shows you as a quick counterexample of, yes, actually human beings can impact the climate, or it can impact the temperature. And of course, and we did it without even intending to. So,
and unfortunately, with this administration, it's going to get worse because we are going to burn so many tires in front of so many Capitol buildings. It's going to,
but the cloud could block out the sun.
It's true.
Localized cooling.
You have a whole lot of people who would not be wearing a mask.
That's true.
So
That's true.
Inhale rubber smoke at your own risk.
And recreation.
Yeah. No, case closed. Climate is
still a thing.
The climate's still a thing.
Yeah, climate exists.
And it's important.
That Chinese hoax gets more convincing every year. They're really good.
Now, I will say, you said that we're more inclined to go after things with a face, unless the thing without a face is a vaccine, created by Bill Gates that has nano robots in it.
I'm still mad that the chip in my neck won't pick up my smartphone. Like, I'm just trying to over here get Spotify.
Oh, okay. Do y'all recall seeing this stupid asshole testify before people saying that her keys, she had been magnetized from the vaccine and her keys were sticking to her? Do you recall this?
I don't.
Okay.
Please tell me
Ryan
more.
does. So then there at the hearing or whatever, she tried and she couldn't get it to, it wasn't doing it. She
Are
was
you
like,
kidding me? She couldn't get it to work?
But here's
must have been the metal detectors.
But here's the thing, guys. Here's the thing about keys. All keys, unless you're talking about 19th century keys, they're fucking brass.
So they're non-ferrous.
They're non-ferrous. No fucking house key that anybody has, unless you live in a 19th century jail with one of those skeleton keys. Nobody has a fucking steel key. They're all fucking brass. Even your shiny nickel-plated key, it's fucking brass.
I bet she fell asleep with like a popsicle in her mouth and the keys just kind of stuck there.
Yes, vaccines do harm people. By the way, so I just found out something when I was on lunch, and I wanted to show it to you. We were talking about Dr. Tenpenny's testimony about magnetic vaccine crystals. So this is what I found out. So I have a key and a bobby pin here. Explain to me why the key sticks to me. It sticks to my neck, too. I got this. Yeah, so if somebody can explain this, that would be great. Any questions?
Yeah, so many questions. And while the demonstration didn't work out as well as she had planned, on the upside, it launched so many memes, some of them downright artistic.
It's like the flat earthers who came up with that laser experiment, and the documentary filmmaker was explaining it to a physicist, and he was like, that's actually a really good experiment. Oh, if it works, that's going to be bad for them. And
I think I heard something about this.
And then when you get to the scene, they like shine the most powerful laser they can find. They shine it over a mile at another target, and it does not hit the target that they have it aimed at. It hits higher than because of the curvature, right?
Right.
And they're like, oh, well, we have to recalibrate this. And they spend hours and hours and hours making sure they have the elevation correct and all this stuff, and they keep getting it higher by like an inch or so. And then the filmmaker's like, so are you convinced that the earth is not flat? And they're like, no, I think we're going to have to re-examine this experiment. I think we got more work to do. Like even in the face of
your own. Yeah.
Like,
I mean, that's how the human brain works though. I mean, right. That's kind of one of the reasons we're in the trouble we're in is that we have all these defense mechanisms from, hundreds of millions of years of being alive on this planet, and they all kick in and we feel threatened when we have something that we hold dearly. It's not just a tool for understanding the world, it's part of our identity, and we just react with, no, I got to defend my little pod of beliefs, because if one goes, they all go, and then where do I go?
Are you saying we're in an existential crisis as a species?
I think so. There's this is a tangent, but I think a lot of human behavior can be explained by the fact that we're the only species that knows it's going to die, as far as we know. Like other animals, like mourn peers that die, mourn members of their species that die. We also know 100% we are not getting out of this alive. Like we're not going to live forever. And I think that has screwed with us. I think that has messed up people pretty bad. Like that knowledge, that you were definitely going to die someday. I think that explains a lot of human behavior. There's actually a whole theory about it. It's not my original thought. You probably just Google fear of death theory or whatever. But anyway, it might be a cool metal band, or you might find what I'm talking about. But there's a whole sort of idea out there, and I don't know how rigorous it is, but it made perfect sense to me when I read it, that like human beings act the way we act with, religion and theology and violence and all this weird stuff. A lot of it is just, we know we're going to die, and we kind of aren't supposed to know that.
I have this theory on the co-opting of religion by government that I'm not even going to get into, but suffice it to say,
join us next week, kids.
Case closed.
Case closed.
We're going to die.
Yeah. I think we're going to get taxed and we're going to die. In that order. So fine. And then probably taxed again when we die. So, okay. It's a death sandwich, right? And the buns are taxes. So I have my sort of final one here.
Perfect.
Is everything is renegotiable. Like we right now in America, the social contract is being renegotiated. Everything's renegotiable. Just understand that like things that you depend on, things you've never thought that are going to be negotiable, like is your food safe? Is your pacemaker safe? Is the air safe? Is the water safe? All these things are right now being renegotiated. Who gets to have access to these safe things that you've always just assumed you should get because you're alive? That's all being renegotiated right now. And I guess the question for everybody is, what are we going to do about it?
Ryan?
Yeah, overarching theme of a lot of our topics. I mean, the first thing I'm going to do is like something very tangible with that immigrant group, but I'm looking for other topics. Yeah, good point.
The little foil that we have on, like, when you buy a over-the-counter drug, like Advil, you pop it and stuff. The whole reason we have that, I'm sure you're aware, is because I think it was in the 80s or 70s, somebody went around putting, I forget what, some kind of poison in Advil bottles.
Oh, I've heard, that's sort
of yeah. And so that's why they gave us the tamper-resistant seal. So from the factory, you can see that it is sealed. And if you see that it's been fucked with, the seal has been broken. Thank you, FDA. So if we don't have that to be enforced, that's a very simple, small thing that, is being renegotiated. Maybe we don't need to have the little foil seals on there. Maybe you just put a little cotton ball down inside there that you can, just soak in cyanide, and it's fine. One of my, I think, favorite arguments against universal health care is that the government will fuck it up, right? The government will do a terrible job. Like, look at everything the government does. It fucks everything up that it touches. That's the Republican counterpoint, right? And I find that very telling because Republicans don't want functional health care. So why would they, if we pass it, it's not going to work. Why would we agree to that? Why would we design a system that doesn't work? We have according to every patriotic American, we have the brightest and best minds. We can do everything better in America. Why can't our universal health care be the best universal health care? We don't have this system because it's the best. We know it's not the best because we go bankrupt. We can't afford care.
They're not sending us our best.
They're not sending us our best health care. So why on earth would we start from a position of saying, well, it's going to be terrible? Why? Renegotiate that viewpoint. This is like Hakeem Jeffries saying, what do? We're going to do universal health care. Well, it's going to suck. No, make it not suck. What sucks about it and change it. Don't do that thing. Is it too many wait time? Is it too long a wait time? Maybe we should have more fucking doctors or hospitals.
Guess what? You can. Here's the thing that Republicans have successfully done. They've taken government from being a tool in the mind of the people into the enemy for the minds of many people. But the government's not an enemy. Okay, if you have a good person working in the private sector and they go work in the public sector, they don't become a different person. The government is a tool. And either you are using it to make your life better or someone else is using it to make their life better and possibly yours worse. But the American people, I think they need to understand that if they want, like, there's no such thing as a government that doesn't choose winners and losers. That's all the government does. So whenever you hear that phrase, that means they've already picked the winner and it's not you. But the American people have got to understand that they've got to go out and they've got to get that tool and wrest it from the hands of the people having it now and use it to make their lives better.
And I think in that vein, we're not at the negotiating table. This is like Trump and Putin meeting about the fate of Ukraine.
Yeah.
Right?
We're not even
We're
on the menu, but we're not at the table.
Exactly. So it's being renegotiated without us, except the people that voted for Trump are saying, yeah, this is what we wanted. This is it. Everything we
some of them, well, some of the time, some of the policies.
This is hurting me now. I didn't want this,
right.
But Trump is Listen, if you want to be really depressed, go to the conservative subreddit. Mm-hmm. I go on Reddit a lot. And the conservatives there they think everything Trump is doing is great. And if you lose your job and you complain about it on the conservative subreddit, they'll call you a liberal and they'll tell you to go fuck yourself and they'll ban you. Like, they do not allow any criticism of what Trump's doing.
It almost sounds like cancel culture.
It does.
I thought they were free speech absolutists. Mm-hmm. I'm so confused. Oh, I'm doing the thing my mom does. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
No, so
hypocrisy. I got them. They're done.
They ain't got no souls. You can't do a you can't do a gotcha on them.
That's true.
They don't got no
There's
souls.
no shame either.
But no, it's being renegotiated without us.
It's just, I mean, I hate to say this because it sounds really cynical, but like the same things that impact like being an organism on the planet Earth, like we're just going to go and take things because we want them to make our babies or to do whatever. Like they're just going to keep taking until they hit an external force that makes them stop. And so the American people are going to have to decide when they want to be that force that makes the wealthy people in this country just stop taking more and more and more. These are not people who are satisfied. They're not like, man, when I hit $300 billion, that's going to be the life. I'm going to be so happy. And I'm going to open up a little bakery somewhere in SoCal and I'm just going to lose money, but I don't care. I'm just going to have fun. They're not like that. They're like, no, I'm going to own all the money on the planet until something stops me.
And this kind of also this circles kind of back to the reporting or the media. There have been like a string of articles that are almost giddy that Musk is on track to be the world's first trillionaire. If you're going to write about that, that should be written about as a warning, not as like a curious interest piece.
Again, being individuals should not have the resources of a nation state. In fact, I think like your 100% tax idea is a great idea. I think, though, it should be based on the wealth of the poorest country. Like it should be illegal for any individual to have more wealth than an entire nation state.
Hey, maybe the excess of every billionaire goes to the poorest, most, or maybe we just go rebuild the nations that we've destroyed through carpet bombings.
Yeah, we like reverse colonize them or something. You know,
Oh, that'd be great.
yeah.
So yeah, are we case closing the renegotiation thing?
Everything's renegotiable. It's being
Yeah.
renegotiated right now. Case closed.
Case closed on that.
Bailiff, can you escort the defendant out?
With your shirt off, please. Any suggestions for future episodes? Because we're gonna, knowing that we're not gonna talk about any of this shit ever again. What should we talk about? Well, it doesn't. I mean, if you didn't like this, you don't have to come back.
I think that what's the old Chinese curse? At least apocryphally, is that may you live in interesting times. I think that we're.
I thought you were talking about the monkey fist.
Oh, the monkey's paw.
Yeah.
May you make a wish. No, there's an old, and again, this may not be real, but an old curse attributed to the Chinese. Like, may you live in interesting times. We're living in interesting times. So I think that new things to talk about will present themselves. I think that maybe like something like we're kind of entering a new international era, and we didn't really talk about that at all in terms of international relations, where America is aligning with strongman governments, abandoning traditional Western allies. You'll see probably Europe begin to militarize. And suddenly the world looks a lot like it did in like 1910-ish.
Yeah, we have Trump questioning why the United States is offering military protection for Japan, because he has no idea that we specifically said that Japan cannot have a military, so we're their military because of how much they fucked up the Pacific in World War II.
Yep.
And he's just like, would we do that? What are we doing?
Yeah, it's kind of like
remarkable.
If he can't go back like 2 or 3 decades to Ukraine giving up its nukes for the promises of American security guarantees, then he's probably not going to make it back to. Is that inaccurate information?
Assurances.
Here's
Right.
the different strata of diplomatic terminology. Then, huh?
Here's what happened. I'm going to tell you what happened. This is the piece of trivia that y'all can take with you. Okay?
I'm ready, Daddy.
When they were doing these negotiations, the document that Ukraine got and the document that the United States got, there is a discrepancy. Ukraine got guarantees. America got assurances.
That's some shady shit.
Yeah. And it was never written down that NATO won't advance one. That is a...
Oh, yeah. No, that's completely... Yeah. That's got to be like straight from RT's archives or something. I don't know what.
But nobody...
Like, who does statecraft? Like, I just want to put a pin in that. If you do statecraft and you're like, Oh, yeah, my buddy George, he says they won't advance 1 inch. Yeah, don't worry about it. Yeah, we don't have to put it in writing. Let's handshake on it. Like, that's not how you do things as a country. You deserve that. You know what I mean? Like, get it in writing, dude.
Also, we should know that, Russia's not using the imperial measurement system. They're using metric. They'd give away 1 inch.
One
There
more.
it is.
Sorry, you took. I'm on toddler time. This is past my bedtime. So.
But yeah, no. So that assurances versus guarantees. That's something that people don't really like to acknowledge because we told them guarantees, but we wrote assurances. Like that's what it's in English
That was
right
the time
here.
I bought a car and I got a loyalty rebate. They're like, oh, we're going to go look into that loyalty rebate. And I didn't realize till like a month later that they had given themselves my loyalty rebate by raising the price of the car equivalent to the loyalty rebate, applying the loyalty rebate. So I got the price that we had talked about. They just never came back with it. So yeah. So I'll never buy a car from ever again.
But so we can chalk that up to translational error.
Language, it's a delicate thing.
International politics, that's definitely going to go south.
It's, with America, if America continues to retract from the world, and even if it doesn't, even if I don't know, something happens to Trump and JD Vance decides, hey, okay, the coast is clear. I'm going to run this like Mitt Romney. We're going to do this bitch like Mitt Romney. And he goes and he's like, we're going to be the allies won't trust us again. Because here's the thing that past presidents understood. You guys know where I'm going with this, I'm sure. But past presidents understood that if they just were like, I don't want to do what the last guy did. I want to do something completely different. I'm not holding up to anything that's been come before. Then America loses credibility, and that harms their own ability to like do anything because everybody's gonna be like, well, the next president will come in and he'll just throw all this in the trash and we'll have to do it all over again in 3 years. I don't even want to deal with the United States, right? So that's something that Trump doesn't understand, doesn't care, combination of both. And so America as a leader in the world in the post-World War II system, that whole thing is slowly being disassembled. And the American people don't know it and they don't care. But when America's currency is no longer their world's reserve currency, then we'll care.
That is another interesting part of the whole how he's going to fuck up our international military alliances and everything.
Good future topic. Another one. Maybe we could find there's many periods in history, but you could do a whole episode on historical parallels. I listen to a lot of audiobooks. Mostly it's historical kind of stuff. That could be another future interesting episode.
I'm probably going to do a whole thing on Israel because when you say that you shouldn't bomb hospitals or schools or refugee camps, if you just say blanket statement right here, you should not bomb hospitals. There is zero religious or cultural subtext there, right? Like, don't bomb a hospital. That's just good, don't be a dick advice, right? I'm probably going to have to do a whole episode on why saying that statement is anti-Semitic is bullshit. Because it's not. You can criticize Israel for being a dick and doing a genocide, which you should do. I'm just going to put this out there and then I'm going to do a wrap up. The whole reason that I haven't done an episode on Israel is because I've actually been waiting like a long time because Israeli media will do what U.S. media does eventually, which is it'll come out and say it'll revise past stories. But what it does first is it publishes the sensationalized story, and then it'll come back and make retractions and corrections, right?
Yeah, revisions never get as much press as the initial reports.
And so I've been waiting for Israeli media to like process the events, but the events just like kept coming. Like they kept bombing hospitals. They just kept dropping those samurai bombs. I don't know if you've seen these things.
Were you telling somebody about it? Essentially, it's like a bomb, but all it shoots out is like swords.
It has
like blades come out of it.
It's 9 blades. It doesn't explode. It just lands and they just like drop that on a hospital, like the plaza in front of a hospital where refugees were, like slice people like just to pieces. But the reason that I haven't done anything on Israel is because I've been waiting for the Israeli media to come back and correct itself because like U.S. media, it's usually accurate. And one of the things that I have really been hesitant to even work on or put out there, because not to diminish the events of October 7th, but is Israel's own media has come back out now and out a former IDF pilot, helicopter pilot, and this was verified later by Haaretz, the Israeli newspaper, that on October 7th, they implemented what's known as the Hannibal Directive, which essentially means that Israel will use lethal force to stop Palestinians or Hamas from taking hostages, even if that means killing Israelis. And the Israeli military has, I forget how many Apache helicopters, and the Apache helicopters carry, I forget how many Hellfire missiles, and they have 30 millimeter cannons. And so on October 7th, Israel scrambled all of their Apache helicopters, fired all of their Hellfire missiles, and fired thousands of rounds, tens of thousands of rounds of 30 millimeter ammunition inside its own borders, inside Israel, not inside Gaza, inside Israel, launched missile after missile in their own borders. So that figure of 1,500 dead, first it was 1,700, then it was 15 or whatever. We don't know how many people Hamas actually killed, because Israel killed a shitload of their own people. So, I mean, yes, it was the biggest coordinated attack by Hamas in history. Yes. We don't know how many people they actually killed, because Israel killed a shitload.
I had not heard that about the attack helicopters.
Anyway.
Would you call it the Haaretz principle? The Haaretz?
It's the Hannibal Directive.
Oh, Hannibal Directive. Okay.
Yeah. And Haaretz is the Israeli newspaper.
Okay, Haaretz. Okay, I got two words. Gotcha.
So,
Hannibal.
yeah, I mean, I've been hesitant to make an episode on that. So, guys, I think I'm going to call it on this episode case closed. There are indeed plenty of other topics to talk about other than the bullshit that we officially knocked off the docket today. So obviously next week's episode is going to be about the most recent episode of Severance on Apple TV.
I've got some catching up to do.
And then after that, I think we're going to take a lighthearted look at the Foxtrot Instagram page. You like that cartoon, Foxtrot? I love Foxtrot.
It's hilarious. One of my Sunday favorites.
Jason, that could be me.
So relatable.
And then we have a lizard, so it's all the same. Anyway, this was Unfuck the Poor. This is all the worst news in the world that we're never talking about again. And for the next episode, it will be depressing. All right, that's everybody. Say goodbye.
Bye.
Tschüss.
Okay, everybody dies.